Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch video, and today we're taking a look at a super special watch from Audemars Piguet. Okay, so as with all my reviews, let's go back in time and look at the history of this watch. Well, we're going to look at just rough history of the Royal Oak Offshore and a little bit of history on this actual piece. But if you want to learn more about the Royal Oak Offshore, then go check out my in-depth review of the Royal Oak Offshore, where I look at the actual history of this piece. So skipping back now to 1993, the Royal Oak Offshore was released as a model for a more younger audience, a more sporty audience, versus the standard Royal Oak. The Royal Oak Classic was a very simple, clean watch, quite a dressy, kind of more towards the dressy end of sports watches. And Audemars Piguet really wanted to find a way to create a watch for a younger audience, someone who's not going to wear necessarily a watch as smart as the Royal Oak. So in 1993, they released the Offshore, which featured a much larger case size, a bulkier bracelet, and a completely new design that looked much more sporty. And immediately it was a fantastic success, not only with a younger audience, but also with all ages, because it offered a watch really with high-end case finishing, but still, it still had the essence of the Royal Oak, but much more of a sporty style. And later on, when they added straps, it became even more popular, and many people from all ages bought this watch. It's kind of remained quite a popular watch. As kind of 5 to 10 years ago, it was very popular. Now it's less so. More people are looking actually at the classic Royal Oak. It's kind of moved with the trends and the times where people started to look at much larger case sizes a few years ago, and the Royal Oak Offshore was a perfect example of a larger case size. But now people are starting to look at slightly smaller case sizes, and therefore people are tending not to look at the Offshore as much. So anyway, we'll skip a few years on now, in fact 11 years on, to 2004, which was when Audemars Piguet released the Royal Oak Offshore Juan Pablo Montoya edition, which is what we're looking at today. They released 3 examples of this watch. The first one was in titanium, which was limited to 1,000 pieces. The second example was in rose gold, which is what we're looking at today, and that was limited to 500 pieces. And the third one they released was in platinum, and that was limited to 100 pieces worldwide. And the watch was designed for Juan Pablo Montoya, or a limited edition for him, or in honor of him. And he was a famous F1 racing driver back then. And the watch features all sorts of different accents on it to kind of give a nod to him and his career as an F1 driver. Around this time, a lot of brands were looking at collaborating with other companies, other car companies, Ferrari, for example, with Hublot. There was quite a lot of attention on collaborations with brands, but not necessarily individuals. And this watch was actually one of the first watches in the industry that actually collaborated with an individual rather than an actual company. And this watch is also really special because Richard Mille was actually involved in the creative process for this piece. Richard Mille and Audemars Piguet Audemars Piguet actually helped to fund Richard Mille. But Richard Mille, the brand, was involved in creating this piece. And it's kind of obvious when you look at this watch, when it features all that kind of futuristic technology, modern style, and that really interesting looking case, is definitely very Richard Mille-esque. So this watch features loads and loads of firsts for Audemars Piguet. Let's dive into the features of this watch and look at the details of this piece. So we're going to start, as always, with the clasp on this watch. This watch features the really beautiful deployant AP logo clasp. This clasp is no longer in use as far as I'm aware. It's been replaced on the Offshores by a D-buckle, kind of go a little bit more with the design of the Offshore, much more of a bulky clasp. This is quite an elegant clasp, a bit more dressy, and arguably doesn't go with this watch quite as well as the newer style D-buckles. Personally, I prefer this deployant because it's a bit more dressy, it's a bit more of a special feeling clasp, definitely feels more luxurious than the newer D-buckles. This is obviously features a full mirror polish in 18 karat rose gold, and when you open up the clasp you see the AP logo. A really cool, nice little touch. Yeah, one of my favorite clasps and not quite as solid as the standard Royal Oak clasp on the bracelet, but still a very, very nice clasp. And you've got the really beautiful AP logo there, or AP writing on the bottom of the clasp. Really nice accent. Moving now on to the strap on this watch. The strap on this watch is actually a really interesting, cool design, and it goes, or it's kind of getting its accents and motifs and inspiration from motor racing, as the rest of this watch does. And kind of Audemars Piguet took inspiration from the racing suits, the fire retardant racing suit for racing drivers. Features kind of that quilting across it like this watch does with the stitches. It's in leather obviously, and it's all hand stitched, so it's really, really beautiful. But for me, I think perhaps it's a little bit bulky, quite a casual strap with such a kind of dressy looking watch with that black dial and the rose gold. It definitely has much more of a dressy look compared to the titanium, for example, which I think suits that style of strap a bit better. But AP have toned it down on this one and made the stitch in black so it matches the black leather. Really cool accent, especially if you like motor racing, a nice little accent there. Moving now on to the case. We're going to start underneath the case and looking at our case back on this watch. The case back on this watch is a clear crystal case back, which is a really, really nice accent to have on any watch. But even more special on this watch because this offshore was one of the first offshores to feature or it was the first offshore in fact to feature a clear crystal case back. It also features a unique rotor on this watch that is kind of replicates the look of a rotor brake on a car. A really, really cool accent there, completely different to any of the other offshores in the line or in the collection at that time. Yeah, really cool movement, beautiful to be able to see it, and really cool accents on the back of the case. Now turning the case over, the case size on this watch is kind of disputed across the internet. It's kind of named as a 45mm case size some places, 42mm case size in other places. The actual case size of this watch, the actual case diameter, is 42.5 millimeters. So it's a relatively small watch in terms of the other offshores in the collection for Audemars Piguet. But at the time, it was the biggest offshore that they offered. And it also had this really new design with these square pushers and those bigger, bulkier crown guards either side, on the right-hand side of the watch, either side of the crown. A brand new look for the offshore, and in fact this watch started the modern look now that we have the 44mm offshores, which now features this style of crown guard on the bulkier side, on the crown side of the watch. So yeah, it's a really important watch for Audemars Piguet, the first to feature this style of design, and this design has lived on now and continues to live on in the collection. This case is obviously made in 18 karat rose gold, and we've got almost an entirely brushed finished case. Including the bezel, which is quite unusual for Audemars Piguet. Usually the bezel features polished accents, whereas this one features brushed all the way around. Something you probably will notice pretty quickly on this watch is the use of carbon fiber. And this watch was actually the first watch from Audemars Piguet to feature carbon fiber on the case. A really interesting combination of rose gold and carbon fiber here, and it's quite a different tone of carbon fiber to what I'm used to seeing. It's actually got a little bit of a green hue to it, or kind of a warmer tone to it, versus standard black and white carbon fiber. It really complements the rose gold on this watch. It's a really different look to most watches. I love the way that Audemars Piguet has combined the black from the strap, the black on the dial, and the black from the carbon fiber accents on the bezel and also the pushers. All ties together really beautifully and creates quite a dressy looking piece. Definitely feels like a very special watch when you wear it and you look at it. So even though the case size on this watch is 42mm or 42.5mm, it wears much, much larger than that. In fact, it wears much more like a 44 to 45mm watch because of those big bulky crown guards. But yeah, a really cool combination of case size here. It's kind of different, obviously, the way the 44mm, modern day 44mm wears. It's quite different to this watch. In some ways, I much prefer this watch because it is a slightly smaller actual case diameter, but it still keeps that same bulky style that 44mm features. So we're just going to break the case down now. I'm going to start with the bezel. We've got obviously a really cool carbon fiber inlay on this bezel, and we've got these bolts that look kind of like the wheel nuts on a car, or just the different bolts across the car. So a really nice little accent there that Audemars Piguet have changed there, rather than their standard hexagonal screws. They've swapped them out for these really cool looking bolts, adding to that kind of motor racing motif. And of course the carbon fiber really adds to that motif as well, because carbon fiber is featured a lot on racing cars. Moving now just below the bezel, we've got just above our gasket another layer of carbon fiber, which just looks really cool. Another subtle accent that you don't notice until you turn the watch on its side. Really cool little accent there. Again, like I said, motif to motor racing. Just below that now we have our center wedge to the case, all in rose gold. We've got slightly different plot links connecting the strap to the case here to the usual watches. Kind of scooped out, reminds me a little bit of pedals, the pedals to brake pedals and throttle pedals on a car. Really nice little accent there. Again, all brushed apart from the nice beveled edge in polish finish. And then just below that, or on the crown side of the watch, we have our big bulky crown pushers with carbon fiber inlays, really cool looking. The crown on this watch is one of my favorite features about this piece, and that's because it is really reminiscent of a wheel nut on an F1 car. A really, really cool accent. Again, like I said, adding to that motor racing motif. And we've got these really interesting pushers that are totally different to any pushers Audemars Piguet's ever used. Again, reminiscent of a car. Some would say maybe they look like pedals. I kind of think they look like the vents on the side of a car, the air vents or air intakes. Kind of got these fins and they're swooped back. They just look really, really cool. And we've got our same bolts on the side of the watch here as well, like the top of the bezel. Now moving on to the dial on this watch, we've got a black dial with a mega tapisserie design, but it's a very different design to any other dial that Audemars Piguet has done, and that's because they've changed the patisserie pattern on the dial, and it kind of has this wave that replicates or resembles a flag, which is obviously reminiscent of motor racing, the start flag or the finishing flag. Yeah, a really, really cool accent there. It's very, very subtle, especially on this black dial. I really like that. And the kind of petite or mega tapisserie dial on this watch kind of mimics the carbon fiber that you see on the bezel and also the pushers as well. So a really nice accent there. Again, everything tying together, and that grid on the strap also ties into this design as well. We've got these really interesting skeletonized hands, hour and minute hand on this watch, both in rose gold. All the accents on the watch, like the indexes, are rose gold as well. We've got small hands, also rose gold, the logo in rose gold. A very, very subtle dial though. It's quite low key, it's incredibly legible with that rose gold against the black. Yeah, brilliant dial. We also feature a date function at 3 o'clock as well. The chronograph on this watch is super, super solid. I absolutely love the Audemars Piguet chronographs. They just feel so solid and so well made, much better than lots and lots of other brands. And the great thing about this and most of the offshores, or in fact all of the offshores, is that it's just a straight push, start, stop and reset, whereas some other watches you have to screw the pushers down. This is ready to go straight away, so a really, really brilliant feature here. Something that's slightly different about this watch and the titanium watch, on the dial of the titanium example, it features the colors of the Colombian flag, which is again another nod to Juan Pablo Montoya. And then just something I don't often mention, but we're just going to look at the box as well. The box has a full carbon fiber inlay. I love the way that Audemars Piguet has continued that design from the watch over to the box and continued that attention to detail over to something that really would never come out of your cupboard. So yeah, really, really cool design, and tying in the same sort of design that you see on the watch to the box. So on to whether or not I would own this watch. Well, it is slightly too large for me. It doesn't look that bad, but I tend to not wear watches over 40 mil. So it's maybe a little bit too large. However, I would much prefer to wear this versus a 44 mil watch. So in that respect, I do prefer this piece. It is an iconic Audemars Piguet watch. Like I said, it's featured so many firsts in their history. It's a really important watch in the offshore's history. So yes, I would own this watch, and the fact it's limited to 500 pieces means it's quite rare that you're ever going to see someone else wearing this piece. It also is a fantastic investment, Audemars Piguet, as it is a limited edition, and the rose gold was by far the most popular of the three examples released, the platinum, titanium and rose gold. This was by far the most popular variant. So yeah, a brilliant, brilliant piece, not only looks-wise, but also as an investment as well. I love the black and rose gold on this watch. It makes it much more dressy than the other two watches in the lineup for the Montoya edition. So yeah, definitely my favorite of the three. and one of my favourite Audemars Piguets ever released as well, purely because of its history. Now this watch is actually available from us now, it's in stock, so if you have any questions about this watch, then don't hesitate to contact us. And as always, if you want us to call any other watches into stock, then don't hesitate to contact us as well. Thanks for watching, and let us know what other videos you'd like us to do in the future.